There's a lot of things to talk about. We are looking forward to guide you through within the next few hours. And
yeah, hi, I'm Aitor. As Karl mentioned, I'm working in the distribution department in K7. I'm originally from Valencia in Spain, and I moved to Berlin 6 years ago, which actually was for the internship at K7. I started in the digital department for the internship, and then I got in the physical distribution department. Now I'm doing this with Karl, and also I started as a level management in the level management team since around half a year. So it's not that I have more experience there, but I will introduce some practices that is also related to the digital marketing. It's not our main thing, it's more like the marketing and pitching team from our company, but we'll give you just some few bits here and there. Does any one of you knew K7 before, are familiar with
Yeah,
okay.
A few. And were there any specific points you were interested in particular when signing up for this class? Is there something you were wanted to know about in particular, which we might know up front, so we could plan some more time within the following presentation? No? Then we would just highly we would like to engage you to interact wherever you have a question or maybe follow-ups, as we are working for K7, which is a company with experience more than 30 years in the music industries, but of course this breaks it down to only this particular point of view of our company. So we are not saying this is the way of how to do it and this is the only right way, as there are multiple successful models within the market, and due to the nature of the product there's different ways of handling. So whenever you have the feeling of adding some worthwhile input, feel free to just give us a sign, grab a microphone, and we're happy to discuss. And I think we will, or specifically you will, profit even more from the whole presentation if you actively raise questions and interact. So to give you an overview of the next 1.5 or 2 hours, this is the structure of the masterclass. In order to give you some background info, we will first of all dive into the history of our company and how we developed into the structure we are working in now, which is leading us to the second point already with the label group and label services. Before we then take over about the main topic, which is the start of a release schedule, we will focus on a bit of everything here. I think it's really some interesting topics in regards to budgeting, stuff like this. Then we will also dive into the supply chain. Here we will tell you something about the digital stuff, which is actually not part of our role at K7, but we thought it might be still useful for you. Since again we are doing the physical distribution, this is where our main expertise is. And the fifth point is warehousing and distribution, which might not be too interesting as it's a lot of back and forth interaction with several stakeholders, but maybe some useful information for you here as well. And also interesting will be the end of distribution of an actual format and product. And that's about it. And let's dive into.
Sure. Well, so K7 started as a studio K7 in the '85 and was founded by our CEO Horst Weidenmuller with some friends of him. And it was basically a video production, music video production company. It started related to this. There was some works with, as you see, Nick Cave or En Studentszender Neubauten among others. So yeah, there was music videos, recorded concerts. It's nice, like in our headquarters in the basement, we have a lot of old records and well, new records also we are just keeping as an archive. But there's like an interesting section with VHS, with really like late 80s vibe music videos. Some atonal recording, like, you know, guys, the Atonal Festival in Berlin? Yeah, so there's like atonal from the late 80s or something there. So it's always nice to go and pick some stuff there and check the archive. So yeah, I mean, this started in a, as you may know, like in a period like before the war, like 85, with Germany divided, like, yeah, just started like as a project like with friends, like to develop this music video company. Yeah.
There was not, just to add some info, there was not really the aim of doing a record label in the first place. It was just recording concerts and actually maybe or rather focusing on a punk scene, rather, which is an interesting background if you see K7 as it is today, rather focusing on yeah, rather dance and jazz music. So yeah, it kind of developed into the company we are today, kind of naturally, organically, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like basically, like late 80s was like Bowie living there, the Page Mode recording the album. So obviously, it was not the explosion of the electronic music per se as we know now, but that happened actually shortly after. So in the '93, K7 started the X-Mix, which was a DJ set, like a mix that some DJ did. We had like, yeah, it was Richie Houghton, Jonako Aviva, Kevin Sanderson. So it was about the evolving of recording concerts into the more visual aspect and aesthetics from these early 90s vibes, as you can see a bit in the video, with something that now it doesn't look too impressive, but yeah, I guess in the early 90s was something that people were really impressed about it. This was, yeah, I think it was VHS, that then also were like DVDs towards the 2000s. Yeah, and also the same time, or shortly after, I think, is when I started the DJ kicks, that probably is what is most recognized for K7 nowadays. Yeah, so starting with some more like techno legends as Karl, C.G. Bolan. Yeah, this was the on one side, like in the early 90s, these kind of mixes, but also like more like US techno, Detroit, but also UK trip hop started like this, the DJ Kicks, Andrea Parker that you can see in the picture here, Thievery Corporation. So it was like the let's say like the hot stuff that was happening back then. So they were recording these DJ Kicks. Format was CD and vinyl, like continuous mix on the CD. And then the vinyl was some selected tracks of the CD, obviously as a whole track. And yeah, there was also EPs for some specific DJ kicks that the artist did just a track specifically for this release, like unreleased track. Sometimes was just this, but sometimes was the EP with remixes or even a couple of tracks. This is not happening with all the DJ kicks, but for some of them they were up for it. Yeah, the Motor City Drum Ensemble, the John Talabot one, recently a Special Request. Yeah, so you can have a glimpse. I mean, here we have one of the most that we are in production nowadays that still, like the DJ Cozy, for example. There's a fourth one that is a nice interview if you want to check. I mean, we wanted to maybe show you, but it's like 25 minutes, so it's quite a lot. So feel free to check. It's like the inspiration, how he got inspired to do the DJ kicks. Yeah, and then more recently the Avalon Emerson, Jada G, Peggy Goo, and I mean the last one was the Elka that was announced recently, and previously the Theo Parrish that is here. Yeah. You want to add something?
No, just working with all these big artists obviously had a huge impact on like the processes which developed behind it. So we were forced to get some kind of structure. We will show you during the presentation as well. So yeah, it's mainly a 2LP compilation with a CD, so these are the formats we are focusing on right now. Previously, in the past few years, we also had like special vinyl compilation or special color compilation for various distributors like Rough Trade, HHV, or
Turntable Lab, yeah.
Similar, yeah, exactly. And yeah, this is yeah, just how we grew into the structure we had, and which actually allowed us, since the DJ Kick series is so hugely successful, it allowed us to develop as a label with yeah, different topics as well, different genres, sub-labels, which we will dive into now.
Yeah, exactly. So more towards the 2000s, the K7 music evolved to the company that we have nowadays. So there was starting to also being albums released, not only the DJ Kicks. Like you can see here, like K&D Sessions, which is the one that, yeah, we keep like repressing every year. It's just a constant seller, classic. More recently, Bjarki, when you can see the bottom, like the blue one. Tricky also has the label with us, the False Idols label, which released his albums, and more recently Marta, which is the singer that is also collaborating with him quite often. Yeah, there was like this budget out from Errol Alkan, Cobblestone Jazz, the project of Matthew Johnson. So this was evolving after the DJ Kicks, but also there was some labels that we were merging as in-house labels with us. Like Aus, for example, is mostly focused on dance music, like 12 inches, club direct music to play with. And then Strat also, which is more like focus, well, was initially on reuse, like soul, funk, jazz, even industrial music. Yeah, but also nowadays we are doing also new bands are releasing there, not just reissues. But we will talk a bit more about it later on when we are showing the label services that will come after this. Yeah, and also this from the 2000 developers in the company that we are now. We have the label management, artist management, and all the departments like sync that Karl will actually explain a bit in the next slide.
Exactly. Nowadays we are based in the headquarters in Berlin, also operating from New York and London, but the main office remains in Berlin, where we have different departments, like Aitor already mentioned, licensing and sync, artist management for Hanya Rani, for instance, distribution, which is splitted into digital and physical, but also lots of labels we are happy to do label services for. Just to name a few, you can see here Bongo Joe, Rhythm Section, Gondwana as a recent signing, and also Luaka Bob and Turbo, which will probably ring a bell with many of you. So these are the kind of yeah, labels we are working with, which you will probably know are kind of big, kind of small, depending on the format they are releasing. Yeah, there's always exciting stuff to talk about when setting up a release, and yeah, every label is different in terms of how they are structured and how yeah, communication is going, and this obviously has a strong impact on the physical and digital release itself, and this is definitely yeah, something you might want to consider for you as well as running maybe a label or maybe having the idea of starting an own label. It's yeah, up to you how communicative you are. There's a lot of work to do on your end, and there are partners like K7 or other people who might want to help you, but yeah, that's something we will talk about more within the presentation.
Yeah, as you can see here, this is separate the label group, the ones on the left side, that we already talked about, K7 and Strat, more recently in the 2017 7K, which is more focused on neoclassical music, Soul Bank, House we mentioned before, Ever, and then we just pick up just like few of the roster we have on the label services. Nowadays we have around 80 to 100 labels that we are doing the label services for, and these are just small pickups that I don't know if you guys are familiar with some of the ones that are showing here already. Okay. Yeah, so
via these label services and our own label groups, we are dealing with about 50 to 70 releases per month. So yeah, this might be an interesting info as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask in between?
Please.
Sure.
If you have this many releases a month, how big is your distribution group? Like your colleagues, like how many people do you work with directly?
The department itself at K7 is basically only Aitor and us. We have an intern, but it's basically the three of us. But we have also a production manager who is mainly responsible for putting all the manufacturing orders in place and doing all the communication directly with the label up front in terms of printing parts and format decisions and which kind of material will be used for the actual sleeves and stuff like this, how many stickers are prepared and where are they going to prepare. So we have help. We are yeah, just the
sales managers that we have.
Sales managers who are responsible for the announcement to the various distribution partners. In general, we have like the distribution network is focusing mainly on the European market and North America, but also some direct-to-shops in several territories where distribution networks might be difficult to reach out to, but also Japan. And yeah, it's only the two of us, and it's a lot of work actually, as you can imagine, since there is always problems with some titles, which we will dive into later as well. There's barely happening any release where something like works perfectly. You announce it on a certain date and just every territory has their stock perfectly sitting in the stores 2 weeks in advance. It's just something which is the 100% nice idea of having upfront, but of course, due to so many factors which are playing into the whole process, it's just very, very difficult to achieve. And as we are not working at a warehouse, obviously, we are working in the office and see the stock via our system, which then allows us to communicate with the warehouse where the stock is actually shipped from, but it's in Austria. So there's always some communication in between needed, which obviously might cause some delays in the release schedule. And that's the setup.
Yeah. I want also to point out that there is the label management team, which is they have assigned labels to them, so they are taking care. Like they are, let's say, the point of communication within the labels who are providing the service and us internally. So then when they are planning to do the release, we plan the release schedule, and then from then with Karl and I also start to deal with it with John, the production manager, the sales manager, but he's the point of contact, let's say, before going to us directly. So we pick up a strat for one of the label groups. This is one of the also classic releases that we are constantly keeping in production as well, from Mulatu, FTP, Aztec, Miriam Makeba, Patrice Russian, and quite a few releases of Sonra as well. This was joining the family of K7 in 2007. As I said before, I started with reissues or compilations of an artist of different records, but now evolving to also new bands, and also compilation of a selector like this Trevor Jackson that I really like, more focused on industrial music and post-punk.
The reason why we mentioned this here is just because so you know that there are different backgrounds to each label, and obviously cause different approaches on the market and the target groups. As like Aitor mentioned, this is rather Afrobeat, Afro jazz stuff related, which naturally has a different target group than a DJ Kicks, for instance, where you maybe sign a new up-and-coming DJ who's maybe huge in the UK, for instance, but stuff like this, Miriam Makeba or Mulato Maztatke and Sandra is like, a lot, has a huge fan base within people who are like plus 50, and it's a bit more advanced, and therefore obviously has different sales expectations in different markets, and this is something which we will also put some focus on when budgeting a product, and that's it.
And here's like a few releases that we are doing with our label services. So basically with the label services is pretty flexible. There's some labels that they want us to do the digital and they keep the physical with another distributor, or they are even just fulfilling the orders themselves if it's small. Labels that are just doing pure digital, and then a combination of both. When we are able to provide the manufacturing services as well, but then also some labels are keeping the manufacturers themselves because they think they are more reasonable, or they are happy with their manufacturing service they are providing with other company. We offer the social media strategy, marketing advices, and sync, which is something that obviously it really depends of the label approach, and obviously they have the last word, but we are here to advise the label management team what's the best for them for a specific release. Here are some examples. The first one, probably I think I can speak for both that this was the biggest project we have been involved since we were working in K7, was the flatting points with Pharoah Sanders and the London Symphony Orchestra, which was released in 2021. With this label Back Above that we are working since quite a lot of years, that was founded by David Byrne from Talking Heads. This came in a specific moment that was, I think was released or announced on March, late March 2021. It's like pure lockdown. Everything was quite, intense, I guess, to say the least. It came in this moment. It was a project that we were actually looking for when it was like announced by the label that it's going to be the new one in 2021. Just so you know, like the amount we estimated to press, which was quite quite a lot, I will say, for where we're coming from. It was just gone in the first day of the announcement. So, okay, it's like we need a bigger boat. Let's see how we can do it. And it was also not that easy because in the pandemic, our D2C business was growing a lot because obviously shops were closed. Some distributors were working partially with a lot of sick leaves, etc. So it was not that easy to find the slots for the represses because we were repressing a lot in that period. So we have maybe the whole year already booked, and just seeing this release that we needed to fulfill all the orders that was needed, it was quite hectic times to just trying to find the slots, like replacing slot of this release, so we postponed this release here, so we have maybe some 1,000 units here, there, and I don't know, I think throughout the whole year, there was at least an average of one repress per month or something, since March, which is quite a lot. And also special editions, I think was a special edition for every store, special edition end of the year, I don't know. It's a beautiful record. Now I think it's now in June, they are performing it live. Floating Points and orchestra. I think I kind of forgot who was the one who was replacing Faroa. But yeah, well, anyway, this just keep going on because there's like a sort of an after movie, I think, for that. Yeah, so basically, this was the Floating Points. Then some examples like the Angel Bat David or International Anthem, the Spirit Exit of Caterina Barbieri, and the recently announced collaboration of Tony Allen for the Jazz is Dead label. You want to add something for this, for the label services?
No, it's actually that this was a release where we could definitely feel that you can do all the planning up front and do some sales expectations, but you can always be surprised by the success of a product, which then blows up like this. For instance, it was highly critically acclaimed, like everyone was after this record, and we did over, like he said, nearly every month was a pressing. I think in total we did more than 20 represses, and it's just, you can be prepared as much as you want. There will always be surprises which cause you to be forced in amending your workflow, and this is just something to consider when planning a release, and
Cool. So sure.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but if we carry on from the previous slide, the theme, label services.
Sure.
I was wondering, what is the selection process of people you work with? Like, how can someone just apply to it, or is I would like to know how you choose.
Sure. I mean, everyone is free to apply, but then there's some criteria based on. This is not our decision for our department. It's not our department, but we are. I mean, I'm also forwarding labels that I consider interesting, or that is reaching out to me, like from friends or something that I think that can fit. And sometimes it worked, and we are offering the services. Sometimes it's not, I don't know, suitable for the criteria that we are looking for, because obviously it's like, I mean, it really depends with a lot of factors, like from the digital and physical history, how long is the label operating. I mean, it doesn't need to be like a long time label at all. I mean, this is not but it's just something that I know more or less the criteria, but not all the points that is needed to follow, so it's not our decision. But it's obviously totally free to apply, and
But it's obviously down to the genre, as we are mainly doing electronic music, left field, experimental, and jazz, but we don't deal with any hard rock bands or metal or something which is actually, like, the fan base of metal bands is huge and actually the most loyal one within the market. Like sales are crazy there, and so it is like with pop stars or something. But this is nothing we do. We focus on those genres I just mentioned, and then it.
Exactly. It's just our network is maybe not able to provide the services for this kind of music.
Sure.
But it's not that we are we are really open, and I mean.
So would there be like a section on your webpage where people can apply, or do you need to find an email? Like how would you advise to people?
Yeah, I think in the website there's the section of the label services group, and there's an email to apply there, or to send your suggestions. Yeah, there's a contact email for sure. Yeah, no worries. So moving forward on the start of release schedule, this is something that is, exactly, combining here the physical, digital album campaign. I mean, we are trying to just show you guys how this is more or less an approximate, of course, like every release is different. It's not a strict how-to of this, but this is, let's say, in order to have all the release delivered smooth and on point. This is more or less the schedule that we have in mind that we wanted to show you, to just you have an idea, but obviously this is really depending of, again, the label, the artist is just quite different within all the roster that we have. So around 6-7 months before the release date is obviously nowadays the timing for the manufacturing deliveries is not how it was a few years ago, especially after the pandemic. Like manufacturers like fully booked, really hard to get the slots, minimum quantities to press. So this is also related to the to deal with which kind of album we are talking about. Like, okay, if this is the minimum, how can we reach this? It's really worth it to do it physical. Shall we look into another pressing plan? Yeah, we will dive into this after. But yeah, basically, this is more or less what we do at K7, but also for the label services. So asking, in this case, us, ourselves, or the label, how many shall we press? Obviously looking into the history of the artist, if, I don't know, they have already a tour planned for this year for the album, everything like PR involved already, so everything, or history sales of the previous albums, and then we can just figure it out more or less. Sometimes normally it's quite easy like to decide this because we both agree, like the label and us. Sometimes they are not, no, we want this, so in the end they are the ones that they decide. Obviously we can just give advice, so yeah, it really depends. Yeah, so we book the slot in the manufacturing, and then we get the test pressings, which is something that, yeah, can be really approved just at once. Lately we have a problem with one specific record, that is the third test pressing that they decline because it's really ambient sound design-ish, clean sound that with the nature of the sound of the vinyl, sometimes it's complicated to just do it like it's not accurate. But I understand also the point of the artist and the label that is like, this should sound not like this. So this is not something that happened really like regular. This is like really rare cases, but yeah, this is how actually it's good to have that in advance, like half a year or more even before, because the delays of the test pressing can lead to delay on the slot, and therefore the delay on the release date that was planned. So yeah, and then around 5 months before release date, we get the artworks, the files that we send to manufacturing for the artworks, the labels. If there's any insert that we should also put inside the vinyl. Sometimes also, I mean, this is normally also quite easy, but sometimes the label is really, you have to taste them for this, like, oh yeah, but there's a delay with the designer or whatever. and then it's like, okay, yeah, we need to get this into manufacturing now. So it's good to have an orientation of this, but yeah, it really depends. It's not a big thing, but yeah. And then also asking for private links so we can listen to it. Normally also it comes before the previous month when we release, when we check the quantities, but sometimes they don't even have the masterings and they have just raw demos. So yeah, maybe around that time it's also good to have the streaming links private so we can share within the team, and then it's when we start to share with the marketing team and the pitching team, because they would like to know maybe sometimes like, okay, what's going on this year or even next year, so we can just be ahead of this and plan with all the DSPs and PRs. Yeah. Yeah, and then moving forward, there's a release date that we can fix already, let's say around 5 months before, that we have to stick to it. This all sometimes can be delayed. I mean, we're experiencing a lot of delays in the releases because, I mean, this is also where we are doing the manufacturing, but sometimes the stock comes from the label and they want to release a specific date that at least we need the stock with us 6 weeks to reach to the US, and 4 to 2 weeks within the EU and UK. So obviously, if the record arrives the week before the release date, the distributors are going to be like, we need to push it to next month. So maybe it's going to be released on their Bandcamp or whatever, but then in the stores, the release date, it's delayed. So this is something that we try to obviously chase the labels to just deliver in the right time, but sometimes it's out of our control. But when we have the control, this is what we ask for. And also, we started to ask if there would be like PR and marketing budget involved for the release. So this is also something that I forward to the pitching team always. Okay, and then...
That's the question, I think.
Ah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I had a question. So when there's a mismatch between the digital release and the release in the stores, do you prefer that the digital release happens first or the one, I mean, does it matter? Because maybe like if it's not digitally released but it's released in the stores, then your store sales could like be better because people can only access it that way. And also why 4 months before the, why do you deliver the music 4 months before on DSPs? Because it actually just takes like 3 weeks, 2 weeks to appear in like, so why is there the 4-month period?
Yeah, because the pitching team needs it in advance in order to pitch it properly.
Okay.
And also it's a safe day, let's say, because it happened also recently that the week before is like, no, it was actually the same week of the single announcement. Oh, can we change the artwork? And this is something that it takes, I think, 1 or 2 days to upload to update in the DSP. Yeah. So this is in order to have it this upfront, especially for the marketing side, but in order to avoid this kind of issues like last minute that it happened quite a lot. Or actually it's like, we realized that we want to postpone this date. Okay. So then you have time, you have a margin you can tell the DSPs, we can move this, you can push this for a week or 2 or a month, and it's updated correctly, because if it happens like the same Friday of the announcement, they say like, hey, we didn't want this, we didn't communicate properly, sorry, but we want it for next week. It's like, it's already online. The same day you cannot just take it down. I think it takes at the very least 48 hours. And if it's during the weekend, it's gonna be on Wednesday. So yeah, this is just in order to have everything in place beforehand.
But usually your aim is to release digitally and physically right at the same time, or like?
Normally, yes, it really depends of the record, because sometimes it's like, no, we actually really want the digital to go before, and the physical is coming a bit later. We can announce to fans like, and Bandcamp is there like shipping estimate, and then maybe it's a specific date that doesn't need to be for the digital. But the goal, what we plan always, is to have the same date. That's why we are taking into account the manufacturing process earlier to see the times and adjust this to release date. So it's released the same day, and even the customers can buy it the same day at the store that is released, and it's not, you know, like.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And often for some 12-inch releases for like DJ-based club music, stuff like Dorisburg, for instance, you often have the 12-inch physical release 2 or 3 weeks prior the actual digital release, just to be a bit more DJ-friendly, coolish, whatever you want to phrase it. But this can also be a strategy for you as a label. Also depends on you as a label. What's your aim, right? I mean, there's also vinyl-only labels, you know, where digital does not even is part of their consideration at all. So, yeah, that's something.
So it's interesting to see this, what is like the schedule of a professional structure in this sense, because I think there's also a lot of artists here who are releasing independently or independent record labels also that maybe have different timings. And the truth is that there's so many parts involved in the process that there's so many things that can go wrong. And I think everybody here who tried to release a record has gone through that. And there's always parts in the middle that you wanted to address and you don't have time to because you just scheduled it too tight, no? So it's nice to see like this kind of scheduling. Too, and I was going to ask you something, but I completely forgot. But I think it had to do with the label services. So not only are you part of these labels that you're working with, not only are you distributing them, but you are also providing services in terms of manufacture, and also you are working with specific PR agencies and marketing agencies where so is the PR in-house or do you work with like external partners?
No, we don't have in-house PR. Actually, we are hiring it for also the DJ kicks and I mean all the K7 and label group services related. But normally the labels themselves, we're asking if they are doing PR. We can then direct them to someone, but we are not doing PR. The pitching team is doing the pitching for digital, but not PR like for the artists, like for press online or physical press, for example.
So what you do is just prepare it and maybe connect to the labels to PR agencies that you think can fit their needs. You know?
Exactly,
like
exactly. Or we can even have an advice, like depending on the release, like did you hire a PR? No, or maybe it was suitable, but obviously it's up to them because obviously if the budget is the budget and you are not planning, or they are doing the in-house themselves, also depending on the size of the label. But yeah, we are not providing PR for the labels. Yeah. With the 4 months which we were talking with the lead digital team is delivering to the DSPs. So the pitching team can pitch this and do their stuff, and then. Also, we probably receive an orientated X-Works, which is the day that the vinyl will be pressed already and shipped from the plant. So then, we have just an approximate, and normally we have the PPU already, the price per unit. So this we have to approve. We have to send to the label to approve it, which is like all the parts, like how much is the artwork, the sleeves, if it's glossy, if it's matte, it just really depends. And once this is approved, we are already more or less in the 3 months before release date. So then when it's approved, the manufacturer send the order confirmation. This is confirmed with a PPU, and then it's when, basically, let's say like this 6, 7 to 4 months is more label management, production area, and then from the 3 months until the release week is mostly stuff that Karl and I is dealing with. So then is when we receive the confirmation, we just ask the label for if they need some stock, like for them, depending of the deal they have. There's some they keep some stock for free, or from some quantity we are charging them. If we are doing manufacturing, of course. And then is when Karl is sending the address list to the manufacturer with, okay, we have 3 months before release date. It really depends time-wise, especially if you are shipping to the US. We are shipping via boat. So now it's getting better, and it's around 4 weeks to deliver. but in the previous years, and pandemic was really something that it took like really long, causing delays in the US and a bit of a madness. But yeah, so then we have some also good deals depending of the plants we are working with, that maybe we have just shipments that is, it's just more profitable to send directly to, let's say, the UK distributor directly, instead of sending to our warehouse, stocking that with some cost, and then ship back to the UK. Yeah, this is also the moment that we are the label to provide the one sheet for our distributor partners, the physical distributors, with all the information there, like track list, biography, some key features, tour dates, everything that is when they do the mail out, they can include for the newsletter that they are sending to the customers and shops. And maybe this is more or less, it is also pretty flexible, but this is an orientation, like 3 months before release date is a good day to start to announce it.
Yeah.
Like the label is announcing, we are announcing to our partners. Yeah, normally this is quite fine, there's no incidents, like, well, happens maybe that the label announced 1 day before something on the Bandcamp or something, it's like, it's cool. Or also because they want to announce it on a weekday, which is totally fine, because I think even for the singles makes more sense to announce on the weekday rather than Friday, which is the, like the announcement day, but it's the day that our pitching team is working on it on Friday. So if it's announced before, it's not going to be pitched until Friday, but this is more just digital. There's something that from manufacturing that you want to dive into is going to come later.
Following slides, I think
Can I
covering
ask
it pretty
Sure.
well.
Can you talk a little bit more about the work of the pitching team? And also, as I have the microphone, at some point of the class, can you also talk about because I was reading here in your webpage about the environmental initiatives you guys have, because you just talk about the vote, I guess that's one of them. So at some point, if you can talk about it.
Sure.
Yeah, pitching is something we have in our own department. So this department we are not part of, so there's not too much insight, unfortunately, we can share with you. But sustainability efforts is definitely something we can tell about. Maybe a slide further, we are already diving into the production planning. In general, sustainability is of course, huge important topic, but when it comes to the product itself, it's vinyl, so this itself is already not sustainable in a way. Of course, you can claim the product will be used over many years, and stuff like this, but it's not actually true if you look at the way it gets manufactured. So there are many ways of improving the actual CO2 footprint of a product, which is of course depending on the pressing plant you are working with. There are solutions of working with recycled PET pellets of pressing vinyl. You can use certified paperboard, cardboard, stuff like this. We are using, for instance, no shrink wrap anymore in order to avoid the waste, but using reusable PE sleeves, which we think will be used and can be used just to buy a record and put it directly into the shelf, just like many people do it from the record store anyhow. Like record stores I go, they put it in there anyhow. So we decided to do it directly from the pressing plant and protect them like this. This is something, obviously, of course, the whole supply chain of how our products delivered to the shops is something which has a huge impact on your actual CO2 footprint, which we as K7 are actually tracking. Like we have a sustainability group within the company, which is tracking down the whole supply chain from the pressing plant to the warehouse, from the warehouse to maybe the distribution network within the EU, but also to the consolidation hub in the UK, where we then ship to the US and then from the US harbor to the actual stores. So it is very Excel-based stuff, which has actually nothing to do with the actual music you put out, you know, but it's obviously very important. And if you are interested, we have the full sustainability report shared on our homepage as well. Yeah, which is something we are very happy about, because it's also not top-down management decision, but something everyone at K7 is just highly motivated to get involved and improve, actually. So it's not like in many other companies. I think there's within the employees the feeling of need of getting a greener company, you know, and then you have to sort of fight against the CEOs in terms of like getting the company actually greener. But in our case, it's like the other way around. Like Horst, our CEO, started this initiative already in 2019, I think. 2020 was when the sustainability group started to come in place. So it was really like growing out of the full company, which is something I think is really cool, because you don't really have this in many other companies. And yeah, we can definitely talk about it in more detail. It's not part of the presentation here, because we did not think it would be that much of interest, but definitely, as I am part of the sustainability group and I actually do the reporting as well, yeah, we can definitely follow up on it later. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, we are already in the 2 months before release date. It's a good moment, like, to decide. I mean, normally we decide the formats that we are going to release already in the previous stages, but in case there's I don't know, the artist is like, hey, actually I have a lot of CDs on my Bandcamp profile and I'm selling quite well, and we can decide still to do a CD manufacturing because it's really fast and cheap, and it's just nothing that, it's not a big deal. And it's also a good moment to monitor how the orders are going. This is also when also sales manager and Karl and I is looking after them and see, because ideally scenarios we have stock enough to fulfill all the orders for all the territories, but quite often happens that actually we cannot fulfill all of them. So we have to pre-allocate them. So before even announcing, we are allocating the stock based on the volume of orders that normally is placing, like big territories. For example, UK is probably, and the US are the bigger ones, followed by Germany. So we pre-allocate the orders, and then if we back order the rest, in case there's a spare stock after the allocation, we can also fulfill the pending orders. So yeah, this is like 2 months before, in case we need to move a stock within them, because probably if we allocate it beforehand and we maybe overestimate that this is the order that they have, so okay, actually they ordered, like this territory ordered less than expected, we can this remaining stock allocate to the one that needed more. So it's more about the pre-allocation before we are delivering the stock to them. And then the month release before the release date and the 2 weeks before. So okay, so this is also continue monitoring a stock with them last minute with all the distributors, asking the labels for if they hired already a PR that we checked with them in the previous stages, check it for a status like, okay, is there already a confirmed feature in some magazine, any tour dates planned already, music video, whatever. So this is what we need to send to the pitching team. And yeah, then in the same week also, so check the last PR and last updates. If there's something, the plans after, like remixes, album, or any sort of official presentation somewhere, whatever it's actually useful information for us. And then we start to check, like in the same release week after, to the pitching team, like how was positioned this in the DSPs, if there was some feature in the playlisting or some banner in, I don't know, Apple Music, that this is what actually you asked for. No?
Yeah.
Pitching team, this is what they do. They just try to position this in the DSPs. And yeah, this is basically their work. So we are getting reports from them weekly. That's how it was the previous week. And then maybe, so for the label managers, we check, and if there's some of your labels there that was featured, then you pass to the info to the labels, so they say, hey, this was in this editorial playlisting. Cool. Yeah. So focusing on this last stage of the release, like the same month, let's say, and the release date, this is something that I've been asked for the pitching team, to me, like for the labels that I'm working with. So very important. I mean, this is something that, yeah, you don't obviously really need to take into account, like per se, but it's maybe an orientation on how you can maybe have this information ready for you. So yeah, a blurb, yeah, like a small sentence about the release, and then especially, like, doesn't need to be really long, really. It's just something that, yeah, just the specific information with the strong keywords, something that is really like, okay, it's not just the classic storytelling, but just something telling, especially why you consider this is a special release, like what is focusing it, and yeah. So this blurb contains this sentence, and then either some PR highlights, live dates. This is the stuff that we put in the sales sheets to send to the distributors, and then the marketing drivers that we are being asked for. You have all the list date, but yeah, basically is what we're talking. If this was played in some online radio or yeah, someone posted on Instagram, like, I love this song, whatever. So this is something that we collect all this information to pitching again during all the pitching process. Yeah. So yeah, as we mentioned before, even this is not really our department. We wanted to just provide slide some information, like before releasing your release, thinking about the audience, right, and targeting properly. Yeah. It's mostly identify the audience, if there's any marketing strategy involved, and the campaign key moments, like, yeah, there's gonna be this single, and after the single, within the two singles, there's gonna be a feature on, I don't know, Resident Advisor or Pitchfork, whatever, about the processing of the artist, or a short movie, like the key moments, like thinking about it before the release date in order to structure this. It's really important. Yeah, and I will go through this quickly before the break, and we dive into the budgeting. But there's maybe, I mean, this is something that you can do basically. This not with Spotify for Artists. I don't know if you guys are already. Yeah, okay. So it's something that you can pitch yourself from there. I'm also doing my own project and my small label of K7, and I'm also using it for pitching it there. So yeah, there's some practices that maybe you should consider if maybe you know already. But yeah, first of all, verify your profile, link it to the so you have access to Spotify for Artists. Have a nice bio that you can actually have links directly there to other artists you like or references that you had before. The artist pick that you can either do a playlist or just announce the new single with a photo also, that you can do it via the Spotify for Artists platform. The playlist, discovery mode, I don't know if you guys have heard about it. Yeah, it's like, you don't need, they are taking the 30% of the royalties, but you don't need to pay in advance for this.
It's not in some countries.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It's the same as Marquee. Is also, this feature is also now, I think, just in the US, New Zealand, and yeah, forgot all the territories, but in Europe it's not Marquee yet. But discovery mode, I think, is starting to it because we did in K7 since a short time, but I also tried to do it on my own project, the Spotify for Artists, and they also mentioned that, yeah, it's just in beta mode, sort of. Yeah, just update the image when you have a new release, new single, or you don't need to just, yeah, updating the beyond the image when you have new promo pics. The concerts also, I think.
The concerts is only if you're going, if you have like big things. No?
Well, I think if it's registered on Songkick, I think you can link it to it. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I can ask for it, but I think it needs to be maybe registered, otherwise maybe it's not appearing.
Like Ride and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And then also Canvas, like adding this video loop that is just showing on the phone when you are in the application. Yeah, exactly. This is something that you can do on your own. Doesn't need to be something crazy, but I mean, towards the vertical sort of showing yourself nowadays, you can actually just do a video on your phone that looks nice and just put it there, and this is gonna help you to, you know, I think it's also nice for engage the audience to just see this rather than just the cover there without any animation sort of thing. Also, new feature, you can link to the Shopify if you have Shopify account, so you can upload there the merch, and the people that is listening to it can actually click and go to your web shop and order the vinyl if they want, or caps, t-shirt, whatever you have in merch. Yeah. So this is just obviously, as I mentioned, there's something that.
Promote the follow button.
I wanted to ask that same thing.
Yeah.
How do you promote the follow button?
Yeah, this is just like, let's say on Instagram, like just like showing like the artist page, you can just share and just promote, like to engage the fans from other social and platforms that you have to just follow you. This like the same way you can do with Bandcamp, for example.
Well, I think linking Shopify is not available for everyone on Spotify.
Okay.
I think last time I tried to link it, but there was some kind of procedure, and I have the impression that it's only more developed.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but what I could do from a small label perspective was updating bio. Artist pick, I'm not even sure about.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it might really.
Yeah, you have the banner sort of thing, and also the artist pick you have too.
You have to pay €5 a month or something, so you need to sell stuff in order to be
Yeah.
sustainable. No?
And also the canvas that I mentioned is quite easy. Like when you are when you're already in the delivery of the DSP, the release, before the release date, you can actually go to each single and put one per single, different ones or the same, or maybe some of the. I mean, the last project I did with a friend that we released, just 2 of the singles have a canvas, the rest was just static. So yeah, this is visually is quite nice, because also if you after show this on Instagram, for example, it shows like the visual, it just show like the image. It's not just, and yeah, I mean, for stories, obviously, it feels like it's more, yeah, it's moving more, it's not like a static cover there. So, yeah, I mean, the Shopify, I'm not quite sure, it's just, with K7 we are doing it, and I just tried to put the stuff here that I thought that is already you're able to do it via Spotify for Artists, but maybe I'm wrong and Shopify is not already.
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay,
Just
yeah,
wanted to
okay, yeah. But if not, it's in the beta mode, so it's gonna be soon for sure, the same as the discovery mode that we're talking.
Could you
Yeah.
slide before the one that was there?
Yes. So, and then briefly talking about some that also will be your interest. Of course, we have more information if you want to reach us out about other ones that maybe you are interested in Beatport for your kind of music. There's also some advices that you can follow there. Here you have, I just tried to resume like YouTube, Apple Music, and Bandcamp. Yeah, I would say, I mean, as I also like doing music on my own and having a small label, the one that I'm more handling is Bandcamp, and it's my favorite, like, by far. Also, yeah, tagging your genre is something like release that you can do, and it's gonna relate to someone that is listening to the music that is connected to yours and is in the recommendation at the bottom. It can show up, so it's just linking this way. Also, the community, I think, is really also, and the followers, important to drive your followers on other platforms to Bandcamp, so they follow you there. So as soon as you have new music there or new merch or anything, they receive an email and they can see it in the feed. So being communicative there, I think, is also really important in order to just engage them to just buy there directly, listen and buying there. Also, like recently for the release that I did with my friend, my last project, I tried to pitch it on my own. I just sent like, I'm going to do this release, you tell a story. They always like to hear a story, like what is this, what makes this outstanding from the rest, if there's a story behind. In our case was a story like we were doing this during the pandemic. We were just like, there's nothing to do, everything is closed. My friend back then has a nice studio, so we were just going there on the weekends and spending till the afternoon, like until the very early morning, recording stuff. And we tried to limit ourselves, let's say, with a mixer and just the channels that was fitting in a 12-channel mixer and record the stuff there. So it's quite, you can feel that was kind of a jam that we obviously edited after, but yeah, there's a feeling of this. So trying to say the story that it was during the pandemic, that there was nothing to do, there was friends coming over to also collaborate. So I just tried to pitch this on my own. They got back, said like, thanks, I will pass this to editorial. And then the release date came, and yeah, there was nothing on Bandcamp or anything, so I forget about it. And a month after, I remember it was a Sunday, and I wake up and I have this Bandcamp for Artists app, and there was notifications constantly, and I was like, something happened, and was like, I mean, we did a tape cassette for this release, like digital and tape, and there was like tapes, like buying like one, then after 2 minutes another one, and then following, and then buying digital, and I was like, what happened? So actually, it was in the Bandcamp homepage, in the notable albums, I think, like the ones that is like, exactly, that's like just 4 pics or something, like a square. It was not even in the big banner or something, but this was enough for, I checked the stats, and I think it was like 50 listeners the day before, and in that day was like 3,000 listeners. Yeah. So if you try to do this on your own, it's something that you don't need to invest on PR, and if they pick it up, if you have your own Bandcamp, if you have you're selling the merch there, it's just a really nice feature. And yeah, and the site design, I think, is quite easy to put that layout there and make it nice with a nice banner, a nice color. So try to do it as much as you can, and you can also, I think, insert a video. Well, I don't know if this is also for Bandcamp for labels. I'm not quite sure if as a artist Bandcamp page you can insert a video, but in the header you can just put a music video if it's or a small teaser or something. You can insert it, and visually it looks cool, like the banner, like big video there, and then all the audios and merch that you are showing up. Yes. So yeah, before going into the budgeting, some key points if you want to take a look that in brief we talk since we started the release schedule. Yeah, take into account the timeline. If you are doing any physical format, especially due to the delays that can happen and the pressing plans, and then more focus on the label artists, the tour dates, if there's a producer, remixes, contributors, featurings, anything that is important to take into account for the budgeting and for the promo, and yeah, just the PR and advertisements, just to have it in mind before going into the schedule. Yeah, sure.
I think we touched a bit on it before, but you said you had 80 to 100
label
releases.
services.
Sure, okay, but a month. So
No, releases are 50 to 70 releases per month, and we are dealing with 80 to 100 label service partners.
Yeah,
we are working with.
Well, still, that's a big number.
yeah.
do you have like, how do you work with the, I think you talked a bit about it, but I will ask anyway. How do you work with the pressing plans, knowing that there are huge delays? Like how, can you tell a bit about your everyday life?
Sure, sure.
This is gonna be actually in the next, after the
Okay,
break. I
then
mean,
we do
this was a bit of a release schedule, and after the budgeting, we will talk about our main work about distribution and logistics.
Okay.
And then there's quite a lot of problems that can happen.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And
Big time.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Let's just follow up maybe in the presentation. Actually, we had the idea, since the next pages and slides will be focusing a bit more on numbers. We thought maybe you want to grab a coffee, maybe 5 or 10 minutes break to give you a little rest, because we will go through budgeting of several formats, and therefore it might be intense, and I think a break will be happily.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, welcome back. We have a question from Larissa from the live streaming, which is, my album is of original songs and has songs in different music styles: pop, jazz, tango, progressive rock, and in 3 different languages. How should I tag this on the digital platforms?
I think first of all is identifying the main genre, and then you can set up in all the digital platforms the subgenre, which you can choose a lot. I mean, genre normally is one, like electronic, world, and then subgenres, I think you can pick even up to 4 or 3, 4. Spotify 3. Yeah, so Spotify 3, for example, but then I think Bandcamp doesn't have a limit when you are setting up a release. So you can put all of them, you can put electronic, tag, lead field, breakbeat, or pop, synth pop, you can, as much as you want. So I guess I think the important here is first identify the genre, and then the subgenres after, in order to check them properly.
Yeah, we are usually very inventive in Bandcamp, because it allows you to actually make up your own. You don't need to follow the tags that already exist.
Exactly.
You can make up your own. Also in SoundCloud and YouTube, I think also. But for example, in our case, we work with a digital distributor that is very focused on Bandcamp. No, not Bandcamp, in Beatport. So because it's more connected to electronic music, and we're releasing like psychedelic jazz and experimental music and stuff, and it's very difficult to find in the distributor tags. Like it's just the Beatport tags. So we always, most of the times, we have to tag it as indie dance, which has nothing whatsoever to do with what we are doing.
Yeah.
But it's very limiting in this sense, and all the digital outlets come from there, except Bandcamp. So, for example, in our case, is a bit limiting. But this, I think, is it can be very useful if you can really tag your genres properly, because people will find it much more easier. You know?
Sure. The pitching team, in this case, in our company, is the ones that they listen and they know the appropriate tags for its release. So we ask the labels to set up a genre and subgenre. I think it's 1 or 2 subgenres. So then from there, they know where to pitch it, but when they listen, they know where to place it across the different DSPs. Like, as you select Beatport, maybe it's maybe more tricky than Bandcamp. You are totally free of tagging. But this is something that unfortunately we are not doing in our department, but I know that it works this way.
Sorry, I just remember the question that I had from before. That is, for example, in terms of labels you work with on the label services, do you usually have like minimum amount of pressings that you work with, or like?
Yeah, it's a bit depending on the project, but mainly we only work with pressings over 300, from 300 to 500 and plus. Like we will see in the following slides, especially if we talk about compilations and stuff like this, we are rather talking about 2,000 to 5,000 units pressings. Over the years, there were very successful titles where if we get a repress in, we often think about 10K represses even. So yeah, it's this kind of range of units we are working with.
But just to point out also that this is when we are taking care of manufacturing.
Yeah,
exactly.
If the label is providing the stock, sometimes it's like, guys, 150 units. And we have to deal with, I mean, normally when they supply 150 units, obviously our main network, the orders are smaller because it's maybe new coming artists which are really like underground, niche, or target. And even we have some deals maybe with one distributor for exclusive distribution worldwide. When it's something like, especially when it comes to 12 inches and EPs, it's mostly just dealing with one specific, and they do worldwide, or maybe two, like one worldwide excluding US, and then US is doing their distribution. So it really depends with the label. If it's a limited edition of 300 that they want to keep 150 for their Bandcamp, we distribute 150 easy. But as Karl mentioned, if we take care of manufacturing, the minimum is now 300.
Yeah, but it's a very reasonable number. I think everything a bit below that is already almost an author edition, So
yeah.
300, I think most of the independent labels that are releasing in physical, it's more or less the minimum that they do. So
yeah, exactly.
Great, yeah. Let's maybe pick up this topic of pressing amounts. Following by the key points you already decided on with your release, you will have some specific info from the past where you can take sales expectations from, which this is the way how we do it. We then put into some sort of calculation where we can estimate the sales expectations. As you can see here, this is a standard 2LP compilation, just like, for instance, DJ kicks, but can be anything else. In this case, we would split between CD, a 2LP, which is a classical black version, and exclusive colored versions for several distributors mentioned here as Bleed, Turntable Lovers,
Retailers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Rough Trade and HHV. Based on these figures, you can see some territories are definitely stronger than others, which is always depending on the release itself. Will it be a jazz re-release? Will it be a new jazz band which is based in the UK? Will it be a new electronic artist or whatever? So all these different factors will have a strong impact on your sale expectation, and therefore a highly strong impact on the income which you will be able to generate with this release. So in this case, we are just gathering ideas of what could be possibly be sold based on our experience of previous releases, maybe with some similar artists or similar compilations. And as you can see with the payback in the gray box on the bottom, this is where we take then our calculation from. The payback is the price we as a distributor would get back from the distributions we are working with. So you can see here the PPU, which is the price of manufacturing. For a CD, maybe it'll be 80 cents. For the colored exclusive, it might be 5.80, and the black version might be €3.10. So based on these figures, we would like to make a certain cut, which we just agreed on based on experience from the past, which makes more sense for us. So then, based from these figures we placed in here, we can then make a calculation which which might look like this. Based on all these figures we placed in the previous slide, we would see on the right-hand side the expected income via record sales, which is 82,000. Online sales is in this case sales via Bandcamp or Beatport, whatever. And third-party sales is what you might be able to gain via licensing. So if one of those tracks will be featured in an advertisement of some YouTube advertisement or whatever, wherever, you will be able to gain additional income. So as you can see, the total income would be calculated with slightly more than 100,000 euros in this case, where you then would have to deduct the costs on the left-hand side, which are divided in recoupable and non-recoupable costs. Based on the non-recoupable costs on the left-hand side, you see there is some costs you will always need to consider, like the setup costs at the pressing plant, mastering, which is something you will usually have with your artists as a deal. Most of the labels we are working with have a mastering deal, so the artists send only mixed down versions of their tracks, which will then need to get mastered, and depending on the label's experience, master studio is then chosen, which is here calculated with 1,000, but obviously it can be way more, can be way less, depending on your contacts within the industry. Maybe some of those artists already delivering mastered titles. So all these yellow bits here on the left-hand side are just points where you can easily increase or even decrease, and it will then come to accumulated profit at the very bottom left of 50,000 euros. So all the sales expectation from the first slide will gain an income of 100,015 euros minus all the costs on the left-hand side, which would leave us with a profit of 50,000 euros, which is a pretty decent amount actually. You can say that this is worth doing it. We always aim for at least 20% of the income as a profit. So if the profit turns out after all the calculation to be less than 20% of the income, it is definitely something you might want to consider twice of doing the release physically. But again, it depends a lot on your back catalog. Maybe you do a few releases like this over the year or over the past few years, which gain some income and some buffer for your cash flow. just to be able to also have the funds for smaller projects, you know, which might not be that successful, but you still want to develop some artists on a 12-inch or stuff like this, which might not have these profits, obviously, but it still makes sense to maybe do it, which will be featured in another slide. This will be a remix EP of a 2 LP version, which in this case we place the figures only in Germany and in the UK, because the market situation is that some distributors are more not more qualified, but they have better contacts, or many record stores are ordering rather with these certain kind of distributions because they know these distribute these kind of genres rather than others. So this is something you might want to consider going with an entire distribution for your label. This is why we chosen the figures we placed in here. And then you could, based on these calculations, gain a total income here on the left-hand side of 16,000 euros. So obviously way less if it's only a 12-inch due to the market. You will always reach out to different target group again, depending strongly on which artist is going to be featured, who are the remix artists, who are their fan base. There are a lot of factors which have impact on these. So the profit in this case is way less than the previous example we showed, but definitely is still worth doing it. So again, you have the costs on the right-hand side, where you have to consider manufacturing costs, PR hired if at all, and all these stuff like this, but also mechanicals and
royalties.
Royalties, exactly.
Advance to the producer also.
Yeah. So these are two examples how pressings could turn out. However, there is an example which I already mentioned in the...
Maybe just one question.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Can we go back to the previous... I just had a couple of... The one even before... yes, this one. So in this, are there some assumptions when you're calculating the record sales, third-party sales, online sales? Like the assumptions of numbers of sales, yeah? And how do you also calculate the royalties that go to the artist? How is all of this being these things being calculated?
There's a lot of estimates as well here, because if you saw the previous one, these assignments to the distributors here, like the different territories and the blip, we are considering there's a percentage there of sales that we calculate, that the allocation it will sell. And then it's just a calculation to see if the project is double and profitable before going ahead into this. Then can turn out differently, because this is maybe the profit that we expect, but maybe it's just a big thing and we have to actually repress and it turns out more profitable. But this is something considering all the cost and the calculation we did on the income, to just go ahead or just decline it or postpone it for a different period.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many tracks do you take in count when you plan? You do these pints for a CD or for a vinyl, because the mastering costs there take in count also that, and all the metadata that is necessary to put and all that stuff.
How many? Yeah, I mean, it really depends of the project. And the mastering, sometimes the artist wants to pick up a different mastering, or they already wanted to provide them. So it really depends of the. I mean, this is an in-house label. Actually, this is our label group. So we take the full decision on this, where to master, if any features or special packaging or colored editions, like we mentioned. The label services works differently because sometimes, I mean, we can offer the service also of mastering, but sometimes they just send the masters and the lacquers, or sometimes we do the lacquers, and we then, you know, we take over this cost, but then we can, this is also on the account of the label, all the cost, and at some point you can see also which label is, how they are doing. I mean, we send the monthly statements, obviously, to the labels, where they can see everything, but this is just numbers that we have internally from records we did on the in-house, our label group.
But also in this case, we were talking about a 2LP compilation, for instance, and obviously if you only have 2 LPs, you are limited to 2 LPs, and therefore only have enough space for, let's say, 5 to maximum 6 tracks on each LP. Let's say if they are dance, music, DJable tracks, let's say. So yeah, I'd say on a 2 LP compilation there might be 8 to 12 tracks, depending on the length, obviously, and yeah, like Aitor mentioned already, it always depends on genre, and
Yes, for some genres have longer tracks or
exactly,
shorter tracks.
and also the quality can also vary depending of the, obviously,
Yeah.
of the length.
we had an issue lately with an artist who wanted to actually re-release an album, but put another track on one side of the 1 LP, which obviously then decreased the quality, because obviously you have less space to press, and then the artist wasn't really pleased with the result of the test pressings, which is, yeah, something you can't avoid, and yeah, also causes problems, but yeah, it's just the way it is with vinyl. So in best case scenario, projects will look like the slides we were featuring here before. So you turn out it turns out to be a really profitable 12-inch or compilation. But in some cases, you might also want to focus on different stuff. Like in this case, we planned 3 LP compilation also with various artists, but not in the dance genre, but rather re-releasing jazz. And in this case, yeah, you see the expectation of sales per territory and per format is already yeah, way different. And in this case, we already yeah, expected to only sell 2,000 records. The limited edition on the site is actually a limited edition on the CD. So there would be maybe yeah, like a small flip book included with some additional artworks which give some content to the release and stuff like this. But due to the genre, online sales on the left-hand side might not be that strong as for a DJ compilation, as many jazz people don't really buy single tracks on Bandcamp or Beatport. So therefore, you will have a strong impact on the full income. And also, it might not be the best thing to pitch for an advertisement for New Balance or stuff like this. And therefore, doesn't really gain that much income. So you might end up with a profit of, on the right-hand side you can see it, of only 2,000 euros, which definitely is only a really, really small amount, and considering all the work you're putting in and all the stress which will unavoidable be related to this project, you definitely need to consider upfront, is this something you want to actually develop, or maybe actually not, and stick with a digital release. So this is some decisions you need to make. But also, again, if you have projects on your back catalog which are constant sellers, which are constantly going into represses, then you can definitely cover projects like this as well, because you feel the need of developing artists, or you always wanted to have this stuff on your kind of label and therefore decide to release it. So there's again a lot of factors which have an impact. And then we also feature a 12-inch, which is, I think, the reality for many smaller labels who press like 300, 500 or below. As in this case, we started to calculate with 500 units initially, and the PPU is already €4.73. The payback is only €2, so €7. So there is only slightly more than €2 income per unit margin, and this will come out with a turnout of €270. And I think this is just the reality for many smaller labels, how it can turn out, as you might do all the work and do good at it as well, but it still not result in a profit which is which gives you sufficient funds to pay your rent or additional artists you want to work with. And this is the reality in the music market, which can also be the case. If you decide to go for a physical release, the supply chain will actually start, and there you will have to make a decision which record plant, which pressing plant are you going to. There are around 100 pressing plants around worldwide, but only 10 really big ones which are able to cover the big quantities in pressings, which were mentioned here, like Optimal, Pallas, and Rand are the ones which are definitely bigger, but also smaller labels like Bongo Joe are working with MPO, or GZ is pressing Z Records, for instance, Record Industry. There are smaller pressing plants as well, and it's on you as a label to make your decision while considering different stuff, like obviously pressing times, which can be which decreased now, but especially during the COVID time, it was like often 6 to 9 months even, while it used to be before COVID often only 3 months. Or even less, exactly.
Month maybe.
And this is something which has a strong impact on your planning, because especially if you want to put out a 12-inch, for instance, which covers in-demand club music, but it only due to the pressing plants, it's just possible to release it in 9 months. Current trends might have changed by then, so then the sales expectation is not really matching, and stuff like this needs to be considered. Also, what we feel is in my opinion, the most important thing is the correspondence and management of those pressing plants. Like many pressing plants are just not a real joy to work with due to their structure. They often sign up for many things and then are not really able to handle everything at once, and then you need to wait long time for response, and this also creates delays. What's also not less of importance is obviously the quality of the pressing, which is something we were mentioning already in previous slides. Test pressings needs to fit your expectation of quality you're putting out. Again, it's your label, it's your name, which is the name who people relate to when they hear certain quality. So this is something which is different from pressing plant to pressing plant, and also is depending on the grams you decide on. May it be 120, 140 grams, or even 180 grams as a record. So this is something to consider while choosing your plant. Also, your cash flow situation, like depending on your size, you might have a contract in place with the pressing plant which allows you to pay the pressing only 3 months after it was actually pressed. So you would have time to go into sale, gain some funds from it, and then use these funds to actually pay the pressing plant, while maybe having a smaller structure puts you in a situation to pay in advance, and again, this is affecting your planning. Obviously, location is also something which is interesting when it comes to your sales expectations on the territories. Where do you want to ship? When do you want to start actually ship? Because some labels we are working with are actually working with Mobinenko, which are a pressing plant based in Taiwan. So the stock would need to be shipped from Taiwan to Europe to actually arrive here for the market. And this is just for you to be sure you have your planning on point, while other pressing plants like the ones we mentioned above are based in Europe, where you have shipping times from 1 to 2 days often to your distribution. Yeah.
What is the impact of choosing in shipping costs, choosing the right
Always
100 to 180 grams in 300 discs could make some impact in shipping costs?
Of course.
Go ahead.
It always depends on the weight, right? Therefore, always depends on the carrier the pressing plant is choosing. So then again, it depends on your negotiations with those carriers and what kind of deals you get out of it. It's often that the bigger pressing plants just have better deals with some carriers, just like, let's say, DAXA or UPS or something like this, because they ship a certain amount of records every month, and let's say they have like 50 plus shipments, or way more actually.
I did some calculations here. I think we are talking 300 vinyls from 120 to 180 is 18 kilos of difference in shipping costs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really depends on the carrier also. because there's some carriers that from maybe 20 to 40 kilos is the same range price, but if you do 41, it's extreme. It's like double the price. It happened with. I mean, it really depends, but if the label already decided to 180 grams, we need to ship it. So it's not something that you can consider this cost upfront, because the costs with the carriers are changing constantly. I mean, the cost that we have now, next month is going to be different, could be higher, at some point can be less. So yeah, I mean, we can choose the carrier. We are also asking for quotes before shipping, but it's always sometimes depending on the urgency, or in the pandemic times, like this needs to arrive by this day. The boat were taking 6 to 8 weeks, so we need to fly them this time.
But it is a strong factor which has an impact on the calculation you did beforehand, because obviously stuff like war in Ukraine, you can't see in advance, and then you have a situation where logistic processes are just getting more expensive, which causing your margin to get smaller, and therefore, yeah, this is a situation I think every record label has to face lately, as the margin is getting smaller and smaller due to a price increase all along the supply chain, because obviously warehouses are charging more due to, like, they are paying more to their employees, you know, carriers charging more as petrol is getting more expensive, and all these kind of stuff is surely something.
Indeed. And also going back to the location that Karl mentioned regarding like the times, also important to mention, like if you're based in Europe, let's say the location of the manufacturing somewhere outside the European Union, it's not only about time but about paperwork, which means cost and time of custom invoices. So it's also something important to consider beforehand.
There was another question.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the actual material, because besides money impact, I'm thinking a lot about environmental impact.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case, my music right now, this music that I'm going to release, it has to be with nature. And so I decided that it wouldn't be cohesive, coherent for me to put it in a plastic and put more plastic out to the world, just because I want to have my music on vinyl, right? And I've been searching for plants, or for, I don't know, pressing plants that have a different material, and I wrote to Japan, I wrote to different places. What do you think about that? Have you been doing that research? Because I've heard that you have these issues as well as a company.
Yeah.
So let me know if you are.
Yeah, there's something like which is called bioplastic. I think.
The Netherlands, no?
Yeah, Deep Grooves was the one which developed it. I can't remember who they did it. I think it was Ninja Tune who did a collaboration with them. And this was the first release which was brought out last year. I was in touch with them even. I did not get a sample. What I did get samples is from recycled plastic, because obviously there is overstocks in the market which needs to be scrapped due to the situation. And the initial idea would always be scrap old vinyl, mold it again and make a new vinyl out of it. But the reality isn't as easy. The reality is rather that you have a certain percentage of every pressing which covers recycled material, and this percentage is always a secret to the pressing plants, but something between 5 to 12%. and therefore never really sustainable. What we received were test pressings of fully recycled material, and what we could tell by the examples we received at the office was that they did not really sound sufficient. And we as K7 decided that obviously if you press vinyl, it'll be about the sound. So if you put the needle on the record and it just doesn't sound appealing, we would just decide to rather wait until the pressing plants are finally there, until we then make the decision to maybe go for this recycled material full on. Until then, you can only choose to make FSC cardboard and
recycled poly sleeves. Instead of a shrink wrap that you choose the plastic, you just shrink it and throw it away. Reusable poly sleeves, so your vinyl is also protected, and you can get the recycled ones.
Exactly, the ink is what I was gonna mention. But again, we had like a issue with with a very big artist collaboration actually, which was released last year, and they were also having the same idea as you and wanted to have it as sustainable as possible. So we were in negotiations with the pressing plant. In this case it was Optimal, and it was a 3LP, and the initial price to have everything as sustainable as possible would have ended up with a store price of 60 or 65 euros for a 3LP. So
more sustainable is not printing it.
yeah, and you would also have to consider, I mean, it's not like in a supermarket or in a fashion store where the customer has the choice actually of choosing your product while having the same product next to it, but sustainable. You know, it's not like buying a biofabric shirt or a not biofabric shirt while it looks the same. It's not like this in a case of record release. You know, the situation will be that the customer will end up in a store where he should pay 65 euro for a 3LP, and this is just a huge price point where even the artist decided then to break down some cost points here, and then we decided to do so.
Well, that actually brings to my next thought. How do you see the future of the music industry to be? I feel like more people are becoming more conscious about this, and you're very active with this with K7. Do you think that how we, I don't like the word consume in this sense, but you think that how we're gonna consume music in the future is gonna look different? Or do you think that vinyls are here to stay? How do you think this is gonna turn out?
I think it's a lot of uncertainties here to talk about, since actually the new generation is more focused on like visual short-term music, you know. I mean, if you look at current trends like TikToks and Instagram, stuff like this, I think the majority of people won't consider buying a vinyl, to be fair. But also with an increase of DJ industry, I see a lot of new labels pressing only vinyl without digital at all, you know. So it is a bit difficult. What I have a feeling is that definitely the concept of an album as being an interesting format is decreasing. So people are rather on streaming platforms, and I think it's to me it feels rather that the vinyl physical format is getting more and more a collector's item, but therefore not really less important. I mean, you see ABBA having re-releases of colored versions, you know. Taylor Swift is pressing stuff like this, or Adele and all these kind of artists are also pressing vinyl. But it's, I think, mandatory tool to reach out to your clients, especially in the independent market as a label, because I think the target group you are having with your niche genre you are aiming for is, from my understanding, always aiming for records. Like I personally, when I'm at home, I always listen to records rather than laptops or any other devices, just because I like the format. And yeah, it's, I don't think just down to me, but also to most of the friends I have, they are having similar point of view on it. And yeah, of course, future is hard to predict. You can never tell. Vinyl was already said to be death, and then it all of a sudden boomed again, you know, and yeah, therefore it's a bit hard to predict, in my opinion.
But also, let's not fool ourselves into thinking that digital music doesn't waste natural resources and does not produce carbon footprint. Of course, this is very easy to like with vinyl, is maybe easier to determine and to analyze and to, and with digital is different. It's more difficult because, but also there are like huge resources being used to produce and to store and to sell and to promote digital music in general. So I think also what we don't have is clear data about that, maybe, but it's also something to.
Yeah, exactly. And also like all the bioplastic that Karl was mentioning, I mean, I don't think it's going to disappear, but will evolve for sure to a more sustainable product. That's now I think it's in a beta mode, now it's testing. Okay, the quality is not maybe the one that you expect from a vinyl, but it will evolve. And also, like, yeah, I mean, there was it was almost dead, the vinyl, no, and the CD, and then boom again. And now actually I have some friends that is like, no, I'm buying now CDs because the quality is better than the vinyls that we are doing now. Like the vinyls is starting to not, because all the demand that it is, and we're talking about like maybe something more detailed, more sound design, and maybe the vinyl is like, yeah, this is not the same quality as before. So they are even buying CDs, or. I've been in a workshop for Bandcamp, and they were saying like the physical product that is selling the most on Bandcamp is cassette tapes.
And so, sorry, yeah, when we talked a few times today about resurgence of vinyl, because actually, and how was it for K7 when before the resurgence of vinyl? Like, was there a moment where the company struggled a bit more because you were also like you're also doing digital and CD, but also working a lot with vinyl, so for sure there was a time that was not so easy for the company, no? Like,
I mean, when I arrived, K7 was 2017, and it was already there, the boom, let's say, like Urban Outfitters selling turntables and stuff like this, that it was not the year before, maybe. So I think at the moment I arrived, it was already like, obviously not as much quantities, like the batches that we saw before is like more recent releases. But back then already we were talking already like, yeah, depending on the release, like 1,000 minimum LPs and maybe 500 CDs or something like that. So it was already how it was before in the recession, I don't know, but definitely was like less quantity press, but was always physical products, especially for the in-house, the DJ kicks. There was no, I mean, there's some albums that is digital now only, but yeah, I mean, it was always there, the physical format.
And also, I think like independent labels have a stronger fan base, which allowed independent labels to still keep on working rather than like those big major labels.
Can I ask, do you think there is a standpoint from K7 to put pressure on the pressing plants? Like you were just saying that we're waiting for the pressing plants to get there, but is there? Could this maybe be something for the sustainability group to think about, to team up with other bigger indie labels to promote? Do you think there's any space for that, or?
Yeah, actually we do it even. We are in constant negotiations with our pressing plants and are developing into a situation where we can actually even get the exact CO2 footprint per pressing, which was caused by the pressing we were doing. And therefore, I think we are doing our bit already, but it's also depending on political decisions. Like if there's a CO2 tax, for instance, it would enforce every manufacturer, no matter if it's vinyls or t-shirts or whatever, to improve their supply chain and manufacturing process to a certain level where they can actually, or where they need actually to decrease their CO2 in order to avoid taxes and bills. So we are, like I said, in constant negotiations, but obviously it's just not that easy as you might think, because you cannot say either you start a green pressing from tomorrow or we just leave, because the current situation in the market is that the pressing plant would say, okay, then we give your capacity to someone else then. You know, so it's hard to negotiate, but actually the pressing plants we are working with are doing a lot in this field already, like especially Palas is a very green pressing plant already, but also Optimal is doing their homework, let's say, already. And there is some movement, and I think during the next 3 to 4 years there will be some real impacts on it.
Just out of curiosity, do you think it would be possible to do like one of these actors edition in this super green mode, like this, just like you do like 10 vinyls, but they're like almost sustainable, or it's something that is not made like in a small scale?
How do you mean? I don't understand.
Like an artist edition,
yeah,
like small artist.
like I don't know,
like
10
dub plates.
10 copies or 20 copies, but they're like sustainable. Just out of curiosity, because you're in
If it would be possible, you mean?
Yeah.
Difficult, I think.
Because if a big thing, you said 65 euros for a no? So yeah.
I mean, you would always have to set up the pressing plant, right? So you would have to change the mother stamp actually. So this is always causing costs, as the pressing plant cannot press anything else in the meantime while this is done.
Yeah.
So obviously the pressing plant would charge you for this amount of pressings which they are missing out on, and then you would have to charge an even higher price for these 20 pressings you are talking about. So I think it's not really something to take in consideration.
I mean,
While of course if you have the funds you can always do it,
yeah.
you know, but my experience is that independent labels don't always have huge funds and huge financial backgrounds, and therefore I think it'll be difficult.
I mean, but it could be something that big musicians could do as a pressing or like a starting point of like changing.
Yes,
Just
that's definitely something to consider.
yeah, like an awareness program.
Okay.
It was doubled, so yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, once you made your decision on proceeding actually with the vinyl pressing, the actual delivery starts, where you can already picture probably how it looks like, but we again listed it how our process of working with the physical product is. Like, we usually get a dispatch note from the pressing plant where we see how the shipments were allocated, if they were actually allocated correctly, as sometimes, or mainly most of the times, you have an overrun or an underrun. Depending on your contract with the pressing plant, it's probably something between 5 to 15%, which covers the over or underrun amount. So this puts you in a situation where usually you have an underrun of a slight quantity, where you then have less units to deal with. And if you're a small label pressing only 300 or 500 units, obviously this decreases your sales expectations. But if everything is well, you receive the stock at your warehouse, where you can then start to ship out to various smaller distributions, shops, and countries. Especially in advance to the release is something you want to make sure that you want to have a certain quantity assigned for D2C stock, but also promotional agencies which help you to reach out to certain clients. And what we always do is get 3 to 5 copies of each pressing to the office, so we could actually double check the quality. Is there some bits and bobs on the A side or the B side? Does everything sound well? Is the sticker placed on the right corner? Is the OB strip on the left side or on the right hand side? Which seem like unimportant issues, but definitely they are not, and they cause huge delays, and is something which we will dive into with the next slides, because there are so many small issues which can have a strong impact on the full release schedule, which you don't even think beforehand when negotiating with the artist and deciding on artwork. And the moment you think everything is done, you receive the dispatch note from the pressing plant, it actually is the starting point of all the problems in the supply chain often. Like, it happened so many times that we received stock upfront half a year, sometimes even a year, and then the stock arrives with dings and damaged sleeves, and then obviously you can't ship out stock like this, for instance, to a distributor, because if they will offer this product to their stores and their stores to their customers, they would ask for a discount due to a damaged sleeve, you know. So then you would have to double check, how am I able to get new sleeves now? Who is paying for the damage of the sleeves, which is problems we will try to cover now. I think that's a question again.
Just to give an example, the first pressing that we did ever, we were already late, so we didn't do test pressings, and that was the biggest mistake ever. So always do test pressings, because it was a compilation, and one of the songs was switched.
Yeah.
And it was not even the same artist. One thing is, okay, you have a record from an artist, and you have a lineup, and the song is changed, which already sucks. But imagine that in the sleeve you have a sequence of artists and then of tracks, and then in the record is different. So we shipped them back, you know, and the plant actually repressed them because it was their mistake. We checked everything and we sent it good. But imagine, because of trying not to waste time with the test pressings, the time we wasted to send them back and then to get another pressing and to get them back again.
Not ecological either.
No, not logical and not ecological. So this is like something that could perfectly happen, and
they can also be in the position that if you want to repress, you have to pay again because you didn't want to take test pressings. So this is also the position that can go really, really bad, the situation with the release. If they cover that, it's like they assume the problem is like, cool, but the test pressings are for this, no? Like to just detect the quality and this kind of error, so they cannot do it. But yeah, I mean, sometimes they are up for it, but maybe depending on the contract or the deal that you have, maybe they can not assuming, and yeah, then we have a real problem there.
But it's a general advice to the labels in advance of setting up pressing. Always be as precise as possible in terms of communicating your demand, in terms of any changings during the actual planning. So if you change, let's say, the vinyl and the location of the track on the vinyl, make sure that you double mentioning it before actually sending the
lacquers,
the last lacquers and confirmations. And yeah, just always be as precise as possible in order to avoid further delays on the back end. Exactly. Like problems which can easily appear is stock, which you can see here, which was a pressing in this case. It was not too bad actually, since there were only a few titles manufactured, and this was a repress, so it's not a big problem. But this is always something where you need to check who is actually covering the costs, because also dealing with carriers and and pressing plants can be causing a headache, because no one wants to be responsible, as the moment you take over a parcel, you have to sign, and then when you open it up half an hour later and detect a damage, you will then claim the carrier, but the carrier claim, yeah, but you signed a perfect condition parcel. Like, this is like the reality we have to deal with so often, and it is just a huge headache, as you can imagine, because no one wants to be responsible. Everyone claims to have like perfect service in first hand, and then you have to,
The classic situation with this one, which is happening quite a lot, this is the corners bend, is the distributors show up like, hey, this is bent. It's like, okay, do you have picture of the boxes? No, we throw them away. We cannot claim it. So we always tell the distributors, like, when you receive something that the box is already damaged outside, you see it, take pictures of this, because then we can claim the carrier. Sometimes it's like, yeah, I have pictures of the boxes and they are perfect. It's just inside it's already bent. Then it's problem probably of the warehouse, because they packed like loose and it's incorrectly, so they have to assume it. So this is very important. Like, whenever you receive anything, just take pictures beforehand and keep them, because it's the only way that you can claim it. Otherwise, there's sometimes that you have to just swallow the vinyl's damage, basically.
Yeah. Another problem which might appear was, in this case, record store day release we had this year for something. We decided on a new artwork on the sleeve, and as you might be able to see, I think
you can see
barely on this
like horizontal,
beamer,
like half.
but there's a small hairline on the nose,
Yeah.
on the hairline, and actually from the teeth as well, from left to right. And this was something the band wasn't fully pleased with. So in this case, we received the more than 2,500 units already in October last year, but then detected this issue, which we negotiated again with our pressing plant, who then blamed the printer, who then blamed the artwork, which should not be right. So everything, was a bit of a hectic situation, since obviously record store day release is something where you can't really allow any delays in release date. So we had the situation of actually redelivering the file for the printer, and even then the printer said they cannot provide a 100% guarantee of pressing it without this mistake again. But the label and the artist decided to still do it, which luckily turned out to be good in the end. And then we had to pick up those 2,500 units from our from our warehouse in Austria back to the pressing plant, where it got reassembled. The reassembled units got shipped back again to the warehouse. They got stocked in again. They got shipped out again. So as you can see, it's a longer process for just one single release. We are involved on a daily basis, and in the end it made it, luckily, but things like this can happen, and I think were not foreseeable for anyone in the past. When looking into other problems which might appear, it's some pressing plant might not receive inserts in time for the manufacturing, so they already press the stuff, but press the goods, but can't insert any booklets or something like we picture here. So in order to get space at their warehouse, they already have to ship, which in this case happens. They ship out the stock to our warehouse. Then we get a second shipment with the inserts, and we then need to explain to the warehouse employees how to do it, where to put the inserts, and how to assemble it again, which obviously also affecting delays. And then you might be in a situation like we were in during COVID, where you have a warehouse you're working with, but all the employees, or not all these employees, are the majorities of employees are having sick leaves, so they're only working with 20% of the staff. So this again causes more delays, and similar related problems like pressing defect, like Hugo mentioned, will also maybe be only a small bob or pressing issue on the very last track on the LP, which we often have, and it just causes problems. This is a case of 12-inch release where the label decided to repress as cheap as possible because it's always in demand, but they decided to not use shrink wrap at all, and some warehouses just can't process stock like this because they need to be able to apply barcode sticker. Barcode sticker can't be on the sleeve, and therefore they wanted to shrink wrap it, but in order to decrease the manufacturing costs, this label decided to use a really thin outer sleeve, which you can see caused bended corners after shrink wrapping. So now we needed to order also PE sleeves to get these unpacked from the shrink wrap, get them packed in the PE sleeves, and all these kind of small issues is something you will have to have in mind. And
also in our label group, we are not using a shrink wrap anymore. We are using the recycled poly sleeves, and also we're not pressing 180 anymore. We're keeping to 140. We encourage the labels that we are doing the label services to do the same. Sometimes they really want 180 grams special edition, so you cannot obviously reject that. But in this case, probably we offer also, and we encourage them to use poly sleeves, but the budget is not the same. So obviously they maybe go for the cheapest option, and this is what could happen if you put the thin sleeve and not a poly sleeve, which will avoid this problem. Then in the end it costs more than investing in a recycled poly sleeve that will keep it safe.
Actually, never understood very well the 180 because, for example, I have some collectors' records from rock bands and stuff that come in 180, and that's scratched really easy. And the 140, first they are much more friendly for DJs, no? I think like for scratching, for manipulating than the 180. And then usually I don't know why, but maybe it was just a coincidence. But the 180, I always had more problems with scratches and stuff than with the 140. Also like if you want to put them in your record bag and take 100 discs, 100 records to the venue, it's not the best to have them all in 180. No?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's always the choice of the label to maybe like this demand of these listeners that wanted this solid vinyl with like a big nice sound system in their homes to play like only 180 grams. I guess it's just, like something that they just want to do this limited edition for this niche. But as I said, we are not doing this according to the sustainability program that we are doing. We are not doing this anymore, and I don't know if even which ones we did in the past. I can't recall. I mean, DJ Kicks is 140.
We decided to not do it at all actually anymore due to sustainability reasons, and since I think 2000 and the Sunra to 77 I think was the last one. Yeah. So since 2020 maybe we don't do it at all. So as Fatma was asking already before, this is our usual day-to-day business, what we are trying to maintain an overview on a daily basis. We are working with a warehouse in Austria where we try to trigger all the shipments to various distributors over Europe, UK, US and Japan, which is the territories we focus the most on. Therefore, decisions need to be made with carriers, new setups have to be in place, paperwork for customs and pro forma is something you will underestimate if you are dealing with it on your own, because it is causing huge headache, and paperwork for customs is often not just like one page but 32 pages you have to fill out, and stuff like this is just something which is not part of the fun part, I'd say, of our job, but definitely something you want to make sure is properly done, because what happens via Brexit, for instance, is that no one really knew how to handle things on customs, and loads of goods were just stuck at customs for months and weeks and months, and it took just like ages to get them through. And it's not only Brexit, but also if you ship to some countries in South America, it's often that there's situations where import VAT applies, and then there's just some bad communication between label and receiver of who's paying those import VATs, and then the parcel might get stuck for 3 weeks at the deposit, and then due to no communication back to the carrier, they might even return it, and then you have to send it again. This is stuff we are involved, but also obviously we monitor the stock levels of our various distributors, which we mainly work on consignment, which means we ship them a certain amount of stock per release, and they sell whatever they can and report the sales back to us. But often there is a situation, as Aitor mentioned before, some titles perform in other territories better than in other territories, so we would then try to move stock from one territory to another. And yeah, it's just a constant back and forth with all the distributors we are in touch with. And yeah, I think daily business is like on average 50 to 60 emails on both of our ends to yeah, like negotiate the certain point which needs to be done, sending shipping references, follow up on shipping references, who took over here, who can we get a hold of him, stuff like this, prepare feedbacks for distributors, like this is the stock we have on hand for you, are you fine to trigger the shipment already now, which would cause X amount of euro per unit per shipment, or would you like to wait until the repress of this title arrives at the warehouse next week, or should we even wait for 2 weeks until this new release is in? And yeah, this is the daily work we are in, monitoring the general release schedule with all the small and bigger problems which might be related to it. Yeah. Warehousing and distribution is definitely something we already mentioned now with the potential issues via boat and air. Obviously, this was something which appeared more during Brexit, since first of all, we have our UK setup. We have our consolidation hub in the UK, from where we ship via boat to Red Eye, which is our main distributor in the US. So due to Brexit, a lot of shipments were just caught up in customs. So as you can imagine, North US territory, they are not ordering small quantities, but rather big quantities. So you have like thousands of units sitting at customs, which you can then not bring on time to the release date. And yeah, obviously it's also pressure from sales department, as someone is relying on these sales being generated in the first quarter of the year, and therefore adding additional pressure, where you have a situation that, from our feeling, we had the situation that even people who were working at customs were not even really knowing what to do when Brexit was in place. So yeah, this is just additional headache causing problems. Claim defective stock is something we already featured beforehand, but considering the warehouse costs is something you will definitely have to have in mind, as you might be in a situation where you're not working with a distribution yet, but still you open up a label, you press a certain amount of stock, so you will have to store it somewhere, which always will result in a certain amount of costs per month, as you need to find a solution where to find it. Maybe the garage of your parents, or a proper warehouse like we work with, or some friend who runs a warehouse. There will always be costs, and on long term, generally decrease the margin of your releases income. And to give you a small overview, we gathered this as a small overview, a small label with 5 catalog numbers might only cost 250 units in stock with 1 to 2 releases per year. So you have to consider additional costs for all these shipments of the units sent, which is on the which is on the left-hand side, 50 to 70 units per month. And as you see, medium label, big label, you often ship 150 units or even 2,000 units per month. And then, yeah, obviously, you have to prepare the paperwork for it, and you have to get the customs invoices, which is for one release often 50 to 70 euros, depending on the carrier. You might need a customs broker in order to get it through customs at all. And yeah, all these costs need to be considered up front. And yeah, that's just something important to bear in mind. Once the release was in distribution and you actually, yeah, maybe in best case scenario you sell out and there's no stock left, but the reality is that many releases don't really sell out at all, so you will always have overstocks. If you're working with a distribution, the meaning of distribution is that your stock will be spreaded around the globe, so it will be difficult to get a hold of, first of all, exact stock numbers, because many distributors in some territories will then work with their shops on consignment as well, so they might have received 100 units, shipped out 80 units to their stores, so they can tell that they have 20 units in their warehouse, but shipped out 80 units to different stores, of which, let's say, 60 units were reported as a sale, so 20 units will be somewhere, you know.
Or
and
damaged and not reported.
Not reported, and this is a situation you will have with, like, Italy, France, Portugal, Spain, UK, you name it, you know. So this is definitely adding another layer in terms of, yeah, complications and yeah, it's just something really difficult to deal with, as obviously if the stock is only in Europe, it's actually even easier, but we are working with distribution in New Zealand or Australia, Japan and stuff like this. It's just, yeah, first of all, you as a label, you need to decide, why did this release end up as being an overstock? So obviously it did not perform too well, which leads to the decision of, are you really willing to return it to you? Are you really taking into account returning maybe 50 units from Japan back to you, based here in Portugal maybe, and doing the same thing from all the other territories where your stock might be left? Or do you think rather about getting the stock recycled rather, which will be often more cheap in terms of shipping? And yeah, this is definitely something. And then we experience the switch of distribution is always difficult as well, because you yeah, have a certain stock which yeah, needs to be moved from A to B. Who's paying the stock movement? Is it us? Is it the label? Is it the new distribution? And all these kind of decisions, yeah, add just, yeah, another complication in communication, and yeah, this is something to bear in mind. Yeah, the last few slides were really focusing on a
Daily manufacturing.
daily manufacturing
distribution
headaches, distribution
issues.
problems, which you can have. But we still wanted to include it, as it is definitely something to bear in mind, and as it's something you may not have in mind when you start actually doing a record label. But this is the reality, as it might end up you being in charge of doing very granular problems and finding solutions. And yeah, we hope we could give you a good overview of the physical distribution and the life circle of a full release. And yeah, that's the end of our presentation, I think.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Actually, I think this was very insightful, because I think most people don't really cannot go so deep into the life cycle or the know of this kind of processes, no? And I think it adds up a lot to the program that we've been having like these last few days. And who better than you guys that work with this daily and to really bring us deep into this world. So I think, yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
guys.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.